So welcome everybody to the October 17th Professional Mentor Webinar with Jeremiah Fox. Jeremiah is the owner and operator of Lake Geneva Coffee Roastery, I believe.
Yes.
I feel like I should be smelling coffee in the background, but I'm not. Jeremiah, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself quickly?
Sure. Thank you, David. Like David said, my name is Jeremiah Fox. I'm the owner and operator of Lake Geneva Coffee Roastery. I started the company in 2016. But before I get too far into that, I'd like to talk a little bit about my visual impairment. I was diagnosed at a very young age with the diagnosis of Stargardt's disease. And then a little bit after that, it also showed signs of retinitis imperfecta. And so those are two conflicting diagnoses. So the doctors were really confused. So they put me under photoreceptor disorder, which is, to my understanding, is just a kind of an umbrella term to cover a lot of different visual impairments. So like I said, I've been dealing with visual impairments since a very young age, so I really don't know any different. That's why it's really hard for me to kind of explain what I can and can't see. So to go on from there, I've grew up learning to adapt and do things a little bit differently, but I can do a lot of things that anybody else can. Yeah, from there, going up through school and everything, I had Aaron Van Dyke as a vision teacher, and it was really great to be exposed to a lot of different technologies and things, assistive things to help me accomplish what I want to accomplish. One of the biggest drivers for me growing up was wanting to be competitive, be able to, when people tell you, no, you can't do this, that pushes me to say, yes, I can do this. So I've had that mentality for a really long time. And, that drive, that passion for learning and things like that have really helped me excel and be able to create what we've created today with the business. So like I said, we opened our doors in 2016, and there was not a whole lot of resources out there for opening a coffee roasting facility. My goal was, yes.
I'm just going to interrupt you and ask
Yes,
the first question, because I think that's a lot of what you're going into. So
okay.
So we're kind of, so please begin by telling us a bit about yourself, your job title, what your job involves, and how long you have worked there. So I think you already answered part of the question. So just continue.
So like I said, in 2016, we actually opened our doors, but I've been roasting coffee since 2012. But kind of what got me to that point was I went to UW Green Bay for a year, decided traditional college wasn't really for me, and went to massage therapy school. And while I was in massage therapy school, I was a Zumba fitness instructor to pay my way through massage therapy school, and did that for about 10 years. And then got into, really what I got into was my love for cooking. I found a passion for cooking because my wife got a new job that was about an hour away. So she had a really long commute, and I was having to wait to eat dinner. So it kind of forced me into doing more cooking, and found out I had a passion for that. And I love cooking and using different ingredients to create different dishes. And coffee has always been a love of mine. And so my quest for the perfect cup of coffee led me to buying my first, little bit of green coffee beans and roasting it on the stovetop in my house. So I took that passion and have, got good feedback from, because I started giving it out to friends and family and things like that. And the feedback was very positive. So I took that and grew it to just starting out to go to farmers markets and different events like that. And then we actually opened our doors, in 2016, and took it from there. So being a small business owner, it's just myself and my wife who, we co-own the company, and we do everything from our own marketing, and product development, meaning that, we had to develop different roasts for different kinds of brewing methods and do all that stuff. We do our own sales. We do our own distribution. And so being a small business owner, you do a lot of different things. And that's part of the excitement that keeps this fresh. And so like I said before, getting into roasting, there was not a whole lot of resources specifically geared for people with visual impairments, because roasting, how I learned about roasting was listening to a lot of videos, people talking about how the process works and the science behind it. And that's how I do a lot of research. I listen to videos. I have different programs that'll read documents to me and things like that. And that's how I best understand it. So I can re-listen to things and re-listen to them and really make sure I understand them and go from there. So, but like I was saying, there's not a lot of the videos and things I was listening to talked about using your vision to see the different color changes in the coffee and how dark it is and the slight variations. Obviously, that's not how I was going to be able to do it. So I had to do a lot of digging and trial and error. But I, started roasting coffee on very small scale and found out throughout the roasting process, I can use my sense of hearing and my sense of smell to develop, to really know where I'm at in the roasting process. So from when I get coffee into my facility, it's green, and meaning that it's green in color, but also it's, it's fresh. They're very hard stone, like they're very hard and like little stones. And through the roasting process, they become that brown roasted color that people associate with and have that roast smell to it. But that green bean smells very grassy, almost like hay, or kind of fresh cut grass kind of smell to it. And as I started to apply heat to it, beginning the roasting process, it becomes a very warm, grassy smell. As the roast carries on, and the carbohydrates start to break down in sugars, it becomes, more sweet. And then as further on in the roast, it becomes very roasty, chocolatey, those sorts of flavor, notes that you can smell. So I did a lot of, test roasts to figure out how to know where I'm at in those roasting processes. Then a good auditory cue that I use a lot is there's first crack and second crack. And that's where in a coffee bean, there's a seam that is very tightly closed. And then as the heat, it opens up that seam and cracks a little bit. The first crack kind of sounds like popcorn popping. And I've, learned to use that as an audible cue to know where I'm at in the roasting process. And second crack kind of sounds like kind of when you pour milk on Rice Krispie cereal, that crackle, or like, a fire crackling or something like that. So those auditory cues I'm able to, sense where I'm at in the roasting process. I also use a talking timer because roasting coffee is a very time sensitive process. So you can take coffee and it can go from roasted to burnt really fast. Um, so I use a talking timer to kind of keep track of where I'm at, how long, because I'm looking for, for a full batch of coffee, it only takes anywhere from, 11, 12 minutes to roast a batch of coffee. So I can kind of use the time to tell how I'm doing too. I also had to modify my roaster because by using tactile points to navigate the controls, because that doesn't come standard on coffee roasters. So those are all tools that I've picked up over the years to be able to be successful at this venture. So like I said, roasting coffee goes very, very quickly. So I have to pay attention and yeah. So does that about cover that, David?
I think you did.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So question 2, can you explain the path that led you to this job, which I think you pretty much answered that. I don't know. Do you have anything else to share about that? Or,
No, I just
yeah,
my finding a passion, and really, you know, honing into those skills, led me to this. And yeah.
nice. All right. Next question is, please share some of the greatest rewards and challenges to your job.
So we'll start with the rewards. Like I was talking about earlier, it's very rewarding because there's so many different hats we have to wear on a daily basis, and it keeps things fresh. So like, just for example, we do our own deliveries. I'm not driving, my wife is, but and so just interacting with our customers, everybody's happy to see you when you bring a big box of coffee to them. So just interacting with the people, interacting with the community, and that is a huge reward. Also, just it's also really rewarding, when I sit back and look at where we were when we started to where we are today, all the things that I've had to learn, and do. um, it's I didn't know I would be taking apart equipment to fix it, because when something goes down, you have to get it fixed, to keep everything. People want their coffee every week, and so my wife and I have had to figure out how to, be mechanic of our roasting equipment and our sealing equipment. There's always, just the ways we've improved over the years, our designs and things like that. My wife does all the artwork for our company, and our logo is the shape of Geneva Lake. And my wife, when she was looking at the shape, really noticed that it kind of looked like the outline of a mermaid. So she took that, turned it 90 degrees, and created this kind of this mermaid image in the lake. And so, because we're located in the Lake Geneva area, we started in Lake Geneva, and because the logo is the outline of Lake Geneva, the star on the package is approximately where we lived when we started the company. And so that's that's kind of to see where we come from, and to bring it to today. That's very rewarding. To move on to challenges, obviously there was not a whole lot of references to consult when we were starting this business, so it was a lot of groundwork on our end, and being visually impaired, that makes doing a lot of research and things even harder. But I'm so thankful that I'm in the day and age with technology to be able to have my computer read documents to me and things like that, listen to videos, in the age of information where you can learn so much just by listening. But yeah, challenges just on a daily basis. There's My wife has to remind me a lot of times that when I get down on myself, because I am human, that she always tells me, you do more than most sighted people do, and that's because there are so many different challenges to being visually impaired and trying to do something like this. And I've always strive to do my best and work hard. And so having her behind me in my corner, to help me through those challenging times is a blessing. So just, yeah.
For sharing that. Well, I'm curious, have you ever, in your research, have you ever encountered any other blind coffee roasters?
I have not, especially, especially locally, I know some of the other roasters, but not, no, I have not, but that would be something
You're
interesting.
The first one I've heard of.
Yeah.
So the next question is, what are some of the blindness skills that led to success in your job? And I feel like you touched on some of those, but are there other skills like, I don't know, maybe organizational, maybe mobility, things like that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm very conscious about my organizational skills. I like to keep things very neat and organized. And that's where, my wife and I sometimes struggle because she has her own way of doing things. So I let her do her jobs the way she wants to do them, and I do my jobs the way I want to do them. Just because I need to keep things organized and straight, because otherwise I knock things over, and coffee on the floor is that's money out of my pocket. So yeah, organization is a huge thing. Always continuing to learn and adapt is a big thing that I've learned over the years. And because I think there's a lot to be said about, there's a lot of things that I can't do because I cannot pick up on certain cues, especially during meetings and things like that. If people don't give me auditory feedback, I'm lost. I'm like, do you like this? Do you not? I don't pick up on those non-verbal cues. So learning and adapting, not being afraid to ask for feedback if I don't get it, and being able to advocate for myself, which is I learned from a very young age. When I was in elementary school and junior high and things like that, I always went in and talked to my next group of teachers and introduced myself, talked about things I may need. I used very early on, I used a lot of magnifiers, large print text, things like that, CCTVs, and figured out. So, especially when I was going into a new building, in the school district. It was nice to go in early and learn the layout, meet my teachers, talk about like, hey, do you, in this situation, is it okay if I come up to the board to see what you're doing, or how are we going to approach this and figure out? So we're all on the same page, and things like that. So learning those skills from a very young age have taught me to not be afraid to ask for help, and going on, like, my orientation mobility has taught me a lot to be able to navigate different public transportations and things like that, because there are times when I need to get somewhere and I don't have my wife available to give me a ride, or things like that. So these are all skills that I've picked up over the years that have helped me to get where I am today. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Next question. Who are some of your mentors and how did they influence or motivate you?
So this is a really tough question. But I mean, I've like growing up, having that support from my vision teachers, and just the traditional teachers, to be able to give me that courage, that bravery to be able to participate and have that support system there. So if something's not working, being able to go to somebody. So all those people who have helped me over the years, and just having that support system is huge. My mother always taught me that, to try new things, and once you commit to something, you finish it out. If it's a year-long commitment, you finish that out. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it again. But so that commitment is big, and I learned that from my mother, and my father and my coaches for different sports. I did a lot of different sports growing up. Wrestling was my big one, and my wrestling coaches and specifically my father always told me that the quote was, don't make excuses, make improvements. And because and that really sticks with me, because once you start making excuses, then there's no reason to progress. And once, that's how I, live my life, is to improve myself daily, improve, my situation, and nobody's going to do that except for yourself. So so being an advocate for yourself, like I said before, instead of making excuses, is huge. And so those are a few mentors that have affected me over the years. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Looking back when you were high school age, what would you tell yourself, or what might you have done differently?
So looking back, there's nothing I would change. And like, over the years, I've tried a lot of different things, and I've not succeeded at a lot of different things, but that's okay. So there's nothing I would change. And so I mean, I would just tell myself to, keep doing what you're doing, keep trying new things, and explore your opportunities. For example, if I did not start cooking, I probably wouldn't be here today. And that led me to a lot of different other hobbies. My wife says I have too many hobbies, but that's a whole different story. But yeah, so there's nothing I would really change. And, I tell myself and others that I just try new things, and that's how you learn what you like and what you don't like.
Nice. I agree. Last question, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. So what is the most important advice you can share with young job seekers?
So I was thinking about this, and I think always continue to learn and adapt. Because once you start thinking you know everything, you know nothing at all. And there's Estee Lauder, who founded the Estee Lauder cosmetic company. She has a quote that says, I didn't get here by wishing for it or hoping for it, but I got here by doing hard work. And that's, I feel like that's a very true statement for everybody. But when you have different limitations, you have to adapt and find different ways, and it's going to be even harder work, but that doesn't mean it's not worth it. So you just got to keep putting in the work, keep doing what you're doing, and take pride in everything that you do. I was in high school. I worked at the gas station. I was at a little gas station, and I took pride in everything I did. Bringing people up, and even the cleaning the coffee pots way back then. If you don't clean them properly, taking pride in everything you do. There's not much that has held me back over the years, because I've always found ways to do it. I mow my own lawn, and I just find patterns. And my wife says when she mows the lawn, it doesn't look as good as when I mow it. But I'm very meticulous about the way I do things. And there's so many opportunities out there, as long as you continue to learn, continue to adapt, and put in hard work.
Dave,
Agreed.
Dave, this is Kay. There are some questions in the chat. Should I read them?
Yes, please go ahead, Kay. Yep.
Okay. Lindsay asked, did you have any emotional struggles in adolescence regarding your visual impairment, and how did you handle the social scene during that time?
So when I was in high school, and all my friends started getting their driver's permits, and their licenses, that was extremely hard for me, because that's one thing, that sense of independence that I knew I wasn't going to have, and I struggled with that a lot, even to this day sometimes. But you have to realize that nowadays, there's so many more options out there for people who can't drive. Like I said, that was the hardest thing for me, not being able to drive. So now, with the advent of Uber and Lyft and all those other companies, it's so much easier to navigate than when I was first learning to navigate on my own bus schedules and public transportation schedules. Sometimes it would only take, it should be a 10-minute ordeal, but you have to plan the bus route and get there. And if you miss the bus, then it doesn't come for another, 15 or 20 minutes. So you're that much farther behind, so there's, it's really that the hardest part, I guess, is dwelling on what you can't do, and trying, and that's what held me down for a long time. But when I realized that there was opportunities, I had to do things a little bit differently, but I could do them. That's what really helped me get through all that.
Thanks. And then Jean asks, where do you get the coffee beans from, and how do you choose those suppliers?
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to visit any coffee farms, and how do they uphold your business's values?
Okay.
Great
So,
questions.
yeah, great question. So I get coffee from all over the world. I work with a coffee importer out of Oakland, California, and they've been importing green coffee since the 70s. So they know the ins and outs of getting good quality coffee. What I do is I reach out to my representative, tell them what I'm looking for. They send me samples. I roast them up on a small scale, and I do a blind taste testing because I don't want to be swayed by any origin or anything like that, because coffee is very it's an agricultural product. So you have good years and bad years. I'm looking just specifically for the quality and the flavors to develop these different blends. So I do the taste testing and decide from there what I'm going to buy. I did have a chance to visit a coffee farm. My wife and I went to Hawaii 2 years ago now, and we had a great time. Hawaii along the coastline was not what we imagined because we were on the Big Island. But once we got up into the mountains where the coffee grows, it was very lush, and there's a lot of different flowers and tropical things like that. And it was a really cool experience to have that chance to tour that farm. Hawaii is the only place in the United States that can grow coffee, because coffee needs to be grown. It's called the coffee belt between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. And so it needs to be along the equator and mountainous regions. So depending on where it's grown in the world, it lends to different flavors in your cup. Central and South American coffees typically have chocolatey, nutty, caramel flavors. African coffees typically have fruity, floral flavors, and the Far East have like earthy, herbal, more like cedar, oak kind of flavors to it. And when you think of a good bold cup of coffee, it's usually probably from like Sumatra or India, things like that. So, yeah.
Another question from
I just
Robin.
have a question that's kind of related. You mentioned earlier that it takes about 12 minutes to do a batch.
Yes.
What size batches do you do?
So I've got a 36-pound roaster, which yields, we get like 5 batches out of that's 150 pounds of coffee, because you lose some weight. So as the moisture cooks off, you lose about 15% of the coffee weight that goes into the roaster comes out. So we average about 150 pounds an hour.
Well,
Are you a Braille reader, and what did you learn from your TVI that was the most helpful?
So I'm not a Braille reader. Like I said, growing up, I used a lot of the large print text and magnifiers, things like that. I guess at this point, hindsight's 2020. I wish I would have, because my vision has progressively gotten worse. So it's a lot more difficult now than it was when I was younger. But just using, trying different technologies. That was one of my favorite things when a new piece of technology would come in, and we would try it out and see if it works or not. Because yeah, it works for some people, it might not work for you. And most recently, I tried out some glasses that, I forget what they're called, but they're OCR glasses that do some reading and things like that. Because there are some portions of my equipment that have output, text output, and I can't read them. And none of my OCR stuff can really read them. So I was excited, but it didn't work for me. So I got to try it out. Vision Forward helped me with that, being able to try it out and things like that. So just, like I talked about before, and that's really what I learned from my vision teacher, was to try things, try technology and see if it works for you.
A lot of new devices and technology coming out these days.
Yeah.
And Robin says, I see on your website that you give a percentage of retail bag sales to animal welfare. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so our retail bags, my wife and I love animals, and we started donating portion of our proceeds to different welfare and animal welfare organizations. Last year we donated to Fellow Mortals, which is a local organization that helps wildlife that has been injured and things like that. We've also donated to Lakeland Animal Shelter in the past. And so animals are a huge part of my life. I have a dog named Lola and two cats, Holly and Eve. I did have a guide dog who passed away a few years ago, named Sonny, and he was a big part of my life. He was such a big help for navigating around the town and things like that. Everybody knew his name; they didn't know mine. But yeah, so I mean that so animals have always been a passion of mine. I grew up on a dairy farm, and or helping out with the neighbors, because by the time my family farm was not operational anymore, but the farmer next to us was renting our land. So I went and helped, did chores and things like that there. And so, I always want to help. I want to help animals because they can't really speak for themselves. So I'm trying to advocate for them.
This is Kay. On a related note, I saw that you use reusable vented bucket system.
Yeah. So that's part of our initiative to reduce waste, because so a lot of times coffee comes in 5-pound bags for coffee houses, and that they go through on average, about 100 pounds a week. So that's a lot of 5-pound bags that end up in the landfill. So I developed this one-way air valve system to go in the bucket lid that allows the coffee to off gas, so the carbon dioxide gets released from the coffee, but oxygen does not get into the coffee, because oxygen is one of the enemies of flavor. And so the bucket seals up and doesn't let oxygen in. And so we went to the 15-pound bucket system, and that reduces, for one coffee shop per year, 330 pounds of paper or of waste, because there's foil lining in coffee bags, going into the landfill.
How many pounds?
330.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
that's one coffee
do you
shop.
send these back to the distributor and they fill them, or how does that work?
So we distribute all of our coffee. So what we do when we deliver, it's kind of like the day of the milk, when the milkman used to come to the house. You'd leave your empties out, and he'd leave you full ones. Well, we take the empties back, we wash, rinse, and sanitize all the buckets, and then put them back into service. So it's a much reduce, reuse, recycle. Recycle is always the last thing on the list because that's our last resort. If we can reduce and reuse, reduce and reuse our materials, that's way better for our environment, and our resources.
Robin asks, are other coffee shops able to use that vented bucket design?
So all the coffee shops we deliver to have our bucket system, but that's, it's our it's our design. So other people could probably come up with something too, but this is what we decided to do because we care about animals and the environment, and want to protect those and our resources. Yeah, I'm not sure I don't think anybody else does that. It is a little more labor intensive because we have to take the buckets that come back, and we have to wash, rinse, sanitize, but that's the labor we have to do for that is outweighs all the a little bit of labor, reducing our waste is way more important than, putting in a little extra work.
Have you thought
And
about marketing the
Gee-
buckets?
I wanted to do coffee roasting because I wanted to focus on one thing. I didn't want to spread myself too thin because, I want to do one thing and do it well.
Jean asks, do you have employees? If so, how was it like to move into a management role?
So I get, it's myself and my wife. So about 3 years ago, my wife quit her job and started working for me full time. And if you ask her, me stepping into a management role is probably not her favorite move. But so yeah, it's just me and my wife right now. We've had one intern come in and work and got some college credit and things like that. But at this point, I work with Inspired Coffee in Lake Geneva, and I've had some training sessions with them on teaching them how to taste coffee and how to be able to distinguish different differences and really understand the ins and outs of where coffee comes from. Inspired Coffee is a coffee shop in Lake Geneva that works with people with disabilities and gives them employable skills to, be able to move on and find other employment in the community. So I work closely with them, and that's very rewarding. A lot of the trainees come in and they say they don't know nothing about coffee. But then we sit down and talk about how this tastes different than the other coffee, and they have some really good feedback. And I use that because taste is a subjective thing, and it's a good training tool to be able to tell people, tell me what you taste. There's no wrong answers because you taste it, right? So and that helps them be able to advocate for themselves much better too down the line. So that was a long answer to say no, I have no employees.
I just want to let people know that you can also unmute and ask questions if you don't want to type it in the chat. Well, do we have any other questions? I want to thank Jeremiah for spending his time with us this afternoon. It's
Yeah, thank you so much, David.
very, very interesting, very great presentation. I've enjoyed it. Hopefully everybody else did.
Yeah. I was telling David before we were talking about this, and this is a very different platform for me to be, because normally when I do these presentations, I have groups come into my facility and things like that. So it's so we can experience things differently. But this is a great platform, but it's different than what I'm used to.
This is Robin Ekstrom. Sorry, David. This is Robin Ekstrom in Hudson, Wisconsin. I'm a TVI for the school district here, and it's just so helpful to meet people that are doing fantastic things in our society, and I really appreciate your time in answering our questions. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'd also like to say that if people have other people that they think would be good at these interviews, let me know, because we like to continue them. And I did not mention at the beginning, but we have 2 more coming up, actually 3 more coming up, one in November and one in February and one in March, I believe. The next one, November 19th will be a blind lady who was family education consumer science teacher. And then Aaron is coming up in next year at the beginning of the year. So Aaron Vandehei, TVI. So looking forward to those.
And Dawn Soto says, it was amazing to learn from you. Your story is very inspiring. And now I will be taking a road trip to Lake Geneva to find your Guatemala decaf. The description on your website sounds wonderful.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And
Are there any final questions for Jeremiah?
I did have one.
Is that Alex?
Yes, it is me.
Hi, Alex. Go ahead.
How did you figure out how to cut the grass when you were blind with the lawnmower?
well, I like it. I use patterns. So I tried to walk in as straight of line as I can. I probably do a bad, well, it's a bad job, but it's also because I cut the same grass more than once, probably. But that's one thing, I'm very stubborn, and when people tell me I can't do something, that pushes me to do something, try to find a way to do it. And that's, that's within limitations, so like, I'm always safe when I do things, but it's trying to find different ways to do things. Yeah, actually, I know a story about Erin Vandehei. She was cutting the grass too at one point on a riding lawnmower. I use a walk behind, so
I'll have to hear that story someday. Full disclosure, I also cut my own grass. I have a pretty small yard, and it's actually very shady because I have big trees, so it doesn't grow that much. But like you, I go over the same spot. It probably takes me way longer than somebody who could see would take. But sometimes somebody will say, "Oh, you missed a spot," and I'm like, "Oh well, we'll get it next time."
Yep.